Hello, welcome to Legal Insights, or YouTube series where we talk more about legal aspects related to mobility. Today we talk about what is the legal mobility budget. And if we're talking about legal mobility budget, we're actually talking about flexible mobility. And flexible mobility is your solution as employee. And why is that? Well, why do you need to choose for flexible mobility? As first, it's the freedom of choice that you will have as employee. You can choose how you're going to manage your mobility. Second, the fiscal advantage that you will have. We will deep dive in that later, but it's fiscally attractive for you as employee. Don't forget that. And thirdly, more satisfying. It's more satisfying for you as employee. You can choose how you're going to manage your mobility. So you choose what you want. That's more satisfying for you. So three quick reasons why flexible mobility and especially the legal mobility budget is attractive for you as employee. But I'm talking about the legal mobility budget, and what is the legal mobility budget actually? Well, the legal mobility budget is actually an alternative for the company car. And everyone that has a company car or has the right to a company car can exchange their company car for a mobility budget or can exchange their right to a company car for a mobility budget. And with that budget, you can buy and hire alternative and sustainable mobility options. It's a budget where you choose what you want to do with it. The mobility budget is also a cost neutral aspect for the employer. So that means that the cost for a company car or the cost for the mobility budget will be the same for the employer. That also means that the benefit for you as employee will be the same. So if you choose for the company car or if you choose for a mobility budget, well, that benefit will be the same because the cost for the employer is the same. And that cost is calculated by the total cost of ownership, or TCO. And it's quite important that you know what the TCO means, because then you will see that choosing for the mobility budget is not a disadvantage for you as employee. So the TCO is a total cost of ownership. So every cost related to the ownership of a company car that the employer has will be calculated with until one amount. So we're talking about gas, insurance, taxations, repair, purchase, and all fiscal aspects. They're calculated into a budget. It is example, yeah, the company car that you have the right to have or that you have at the moment has a TCO of 750 per month. That means that your mobility budget is 9,000 a year because a mobility budget is a yearly budget. So quick recap, if you choose for the mobility budget, well, then you can get a budget that is equal to the cost of your company car or the company car that you have a right to have. So the benefit will be the same for you. And what can you now do with that budget? Well, the law says, well, there are three pillars within the mobility budget. Let's go and talk about those three pillars. First, the pillar one. It's an environmentally friendly company car, so it can be an electrical one. It can also be another company car, but then we have some rules that we need to take into account that you can see on the slide. So it's max of 95 grams per CO2 per kilometers. And if it's a hybrid one, you also need to take into account that it needs to be a minimum of 0.5 kilowatt per hours per 100 kilograms of car weight. So you can actually still choose a company car. So we're always talking about, okay, you're going to exchange your company car for a budget, but within that budget, you can still choose for a company car. So if you really need your company car, the mobility budget is still an option. But what is interesting with the mobility budget is that you also have the pillar two and the pillar three. And pillar two is mobility and housing costs. So everything related to mobility, everything what you can think of is within pillar two. So you can buy or hire a bike or a step. You can also buy public transport tickets within the European Economical Region. Also, subscriptions for resident family members is perfectly possible to buy with your mobility budget. We're also talking about shared mobility, so shared cars, shared steps, etc. Also, taxis, rental cars, this is max for 30 days. And also, what is interesting, you can also use your mobility budget for your rent or your capital and interest on your mortgage loan. But also here, there is an if. This, you can only use it if you live within 10 kilometers of your most common workplace or if you work 50% or more from home. So you can only use your mobility budget for housing costs if one of those two, so if you live within 10 kilometers or if you work 50% or more from home, then you can use your mobility budget for your housing costs. So you can see that there is a lot of options within the mobility budget. Everything related to mobility, you can use your budget for. And the flexibility is really important. So you don't only choose pillar one or you don't only use pillar two, but it's actually flexible. So you can buy or you can ask for a company car within pillar one, and the budget that you have left, you can use that within pillar two. And if you really cannot use your mobility budget as a whole, then we still have pillar three. And pillar three is a cash out. So the budget that you don't use at all will be handed over to you to you as employee at the end of the year in cash. But here the cash is not net; it's actually there is actually a contribution, a special employee contribution of 38.07%. So take that into account, that if you use it for pillar one or pillar two, there is no special employee contribution of 38.07. With the cash out, you have that. The 38.07% is a disadvantage, you could say, but with that, you also build up your social rights. So it helps to build up your pension by example. So it has its benefits as well. So that's the three pillars where you have a lot of options to use your mobility budget. With the first two, and actually also the third, you can be really flexible. You can choose how you want to spend your budget. Be aware that it could be true that the employer says some stuff says actually that bikes are not possible or that your housing costs are not possible. This is just the full mobility budget. So always contact your HR or read through your mobility policy to know if everything is allowed within the mobility budget or if there are restrictions made by the company. And this is an example. So an employee has a company car within pillar one, an eco-friendly one. That's 4,500 of its mobility budget gone, of the 9,000 in total. Within pillar two, he still has 3,750 euros that he expensed. Maybe he bought a Thales ticket to go to Paris with a partner and his child, and also bought a bike. That's just an example of pillar two. And then he still or she had still 750 euros left at the end of the year, and he got that cashed out at the end of the year. So that as an example. How is it taxed? Well, we already covered a little bit. So we know that pillar three has a special employee contribution of 38.07, but it helps you with your pension and your social rights. But we didn't really talk about pillar one and pillar two. So within pillar one, it's actually the same as a company car outside of the mobility budget, but it will be fiscally more attractive. Why is that? Because you're going to pay less benefit in kind, and there's also no social contributions. This is because it's an eco-friendly company car, and eco-friendly cars has less benefit in kind, so you will pay less taxes on that car. If you look at pillar two, it's pretty easy. You don't pay any taxes and you don't pay any social security contributions as employee. So that's really interesting. What you're going to pay will be the only payment that you need to do. So net is gross in this case. To have a quick fiscal overview, the benefit in kind within pillar one, just to give you an example, if you have a non-electrical company car, in this example, you pay yearly a benefit in kind of almost 5,000 euros. And if you choose an electrical company car, by example, in pillar one, your yearly benefit in kind is almost 2,000. So you see the difference in taxation if you choose for an electrical company car. So choosing a eco-friendly company car is really beneficial for you to pay less taxes. And that will be also in 2028, but we cannot say that at the moment because we don't know how the calculations will be then. But just to say, it's indeed fiscally attractive for you as employee. How do I get started? Can I first? You need to ask yourself, can I start with the mobility budget? Am I entitled to a company car? And most of the time, also, if you still have a leasing car contract of a current company car, that needs to be done, that needs to be over, that needs to be ended before you can start with the mobility budget. That's also most of the time a rule in the mobility policy of your company. So also check that within your policy. Then you need to send a written request. You need to request it to your employer to say, hey, I want to start with the mobility budget. You can do that via email or via another way. Your employer will notice how you need to do that. And then decide and finalize your application. Get to know the size of your mobility budget. The employer will respond on that and says, okay, this is the mobility budget that you will have. You decide, okay, perfectly fine for me, that's okay. And you sign an annex to your employment contract. And then you can start with the mobility budget. So that's in a quick overview what the mobility budget is. I still have some frequently asked questions that I will go over through. So maybe you still have some questions. I hope we can answer them via this frequently asked questions. If there are still questions after this, you can always ask them via the platform or the app. So first questions about Pillar 1. Can I always get an eco-friendly company car within Pillar 1? Well, that depends. Sometimes the Pillar 1 is excluded for you as employee. That depends on your function category. But so check your policy. Can I pay for a charging station with my mobility budget? If the employer pays for a charging station outside of the mobility budget, you can also use your mobility budget to pay for a charging station within Pillar 1. Can I pay for a fine with my mobility budget? No, you can't. Drive safe, that's always important. And do I need to pay more benefit in kind? Well, we already covered that. So no, you're going to pay less benefit in kind because it's an eco-friendly company car. Then is electricity cost included in mobility budget? So yes, the charging costs are included in the mobility budget. The total cost of ownership takes that into account. So your mobility budget covers that. Which company car can I lease? Very important is that you don't lease or hire or purchase a car yourself. It's a company car, Pillar 1. So always go to your facility manager, go to your HR manager and request a company car and don't do it yourself. Then Pillar 2. What should be understood by soft mobility in Pillar 2? I said you can buy and hire bicycles and shared mobility, but within the bicycles and the mops and the e-steps and the motorcycles, it's not only the purchase or the rent or release, it's also actually the maintenance, the parking costs related to that, but also equipment to protect the driver and his passengers and equipment to increase their visibility. So it's more than just the rent, the purchase, or the lease. You can also buy a full electrical motorbike or an electrical three-wheeler and four-wheelers. Can I pay for my family's mobility? Yes, you can. For the public transport subscriptions, it's limited to family members living under the same roof. And actually, for all other purchases, it's also possible to pay it by yourself, but for other family members or for friends. So there is no restrictions for that. Can I pay parking costs with the mobility budget? Normally not, but there are two exceptions. So if it's a parking space related to public transport, then you can use it within Pillar 2 because then it's related to sustainability, it's related to public transport. It can also be part of Pillar 1 if the car policy, if your employer actually pays for your parking costs and you have a company car within Pillar 1. So we're not talking about Pillar 2 in this case. Then it's also possible that you can pay for parking costs, but that's then related to Pillar 1. Can I use my mobility budget abroad? Normally, yes. Maybe also here the employer says that it's not possible. Check your policy. But normally everything is possible. But also here public transport tickets are limited to the European Economical Area. Don't forget that. Can I rent a diesel car with my mobility budget to go on holiday? So yes, you can rent a car a diesel one, a petrol one, electric one, doesn't really matter. But this until 30 days per calendar year. So you cannot hire a car for more than 30 days per year per mobility budget. When am I allowed to use my mobility budget for housing costs? Well, we already said it, but maybe good to repeat it. So if you live within 10 kilometers of your working place, your common workplace, or if you work 50% or more from home. And are there limitations regarding to the housing costs? No, there are not really limitations regarding to housing costs, but moving expenses are not included. Also, water and electricity charges are not included. And you can also, of course, not pay your mobility budget twice, or excuse me, pay your housing costs twice with two different mobility budgets. That's not possible. That's illegal. Then pillar three, to end it, when will I receive my cash balance from pillar three? You will receive that at the end of the year, but that's in the first month of the next year. So in January, you will always get the cash out of the previous year. Can the money in pillar three be transferred to next year? No, that's not possible. So it's always a yearly budget. Money will not be transferred to next year's. Then taxes, are they paid on the cash balance? And what does that mean? So yes, we know we have a social contribution, and it helps you for social secretary benefits as your pension, but also for your unemployment allowance. But it doesn't give you the right for illegal holidays. And finally, can I receive my entire mobility budget as a cash budget if I choose not to take a car or anything within pillar two? So yes, that's possible. So if you don't have any expenses in pillar one and in pillar two, you will have indeed your entire mobility budget in January cashed out, but also here taking into account the special employee contribution of 38.07%. So that was, in a quite quick overview, what the mobility budget is. I hope you understand a little bit more now what the mobility budget is. Don't be afraid to still ask us questions through the platform if it's needed. And I wish you still a good day and a nice day. Thank you.